This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. At the Manitoba Legislature today, we got news of changes from an emotional issue, changing names, to one that many people find frustrating, changing the time. The CBC's Ian Fraze joins us live from the newsroom to explain what's been happening. Okay, Ian, let's begin with the name issue. What's the government proposing with new legislation?
So the government is proposing to formally recognize some traditional Indigenous names. Right now in Manitoba, there are rules on how you can legally spell your name. For example, a semicolon is not allowed. This bill, though, would change that, expanding the accents and symbols that can be used. The NDP took on this effort last year on behalf of families like Carson Robinson's. His daughter's name, Adate Zazeawe, is spelled with the colon symbol. That helps with pronouncing the name in the Mohawk language, he said. Labour Minister Reg Helwer says families are supportive of this proposed law.
We've talked about names are very personal to families and individuals, important to everybody, including myself, yourself, and other organizations and other cultural practices. We can reflect those in this legislation as well. So it's not just Indigenous names, but that is, of course, the main content of the bill.
Now, Ian, let's shift to something a lot of people do find frustrating, changing the time. Manitoba could end the practice of changing clocks twice a year, but that's still a big if, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So in order for Manitoba to make daylight saving times permanent, it would depend on two big things happening. The first would be that the United States does the same thing. When that could happen, though, no idea, because this bill, a similar bill to this effect, is stalled in the Senate. The other big consideration is us, Manitobans. The government will consult with Manitobans next year on whether they even like this idea. It was Municipal Relations Minister Eileen Clark who introduced the bill.
Other provinces are looking at it as well, but the U.S. is kind of the main denominator here. We do want to align with them because of our trade corridors and the transportation and everything.
The NDP consulted on this idea of making daylight savings times permanent back in 2019, but they say that opinions were mixed, and they argued the government has more pressing issues to worry about. Janet.
Thanks so much, Ian. The CBC's Ian Fraze reporting live tonight. Well, no matter what the time is on your clock, winter is definitely settling over Manitoba. And police and safety officers want drivers to assume roads are slippery and slow down. Crashes involving multiple vehicles on Winnipeg's western edge closed a stretch of the perimeter highway this morning for quite a while. The highway shut down in both directions between Highway 6 and Centre Port Canada Way. The crashes on both the southbound and northbound lanes happened just after 7 a.m. RCMP say it wasn't the only accident they had to deal with. There were multiple collisions on the perimeter. Two Finnish hockey players who were huge stars with the Winnipeg Jets are being inducted into the team's Hall of Fame tonight. Teemu Selanne and Teppo Numminen are in town for the honors. The ceremony will happen before tonight's Jets game at Canada Life Centre. That's where we find CBC's Riley Laychuk tonight. What's happening there to honor Teemu and Teppo? Riley?
Well, Janet, things are starting to get a lot more exciting. They've been practicing the sound and the ceremony behind me for some time now for a special night here at the Canada Life Centre. Winnipeg Jets Hall of Fame night underway. As you mentioned, Teppo Numminen and Teemu Selanne being inducted, the 9th and 10th inductees into the Jets Hall of Fame. And, you know, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but they were practicing getting the banners unveiled earlier, so I got bit of a sneak peek at those banners a little while ago here, and I can tell you they are looking sharp. So a lot happening here. I can smell the popcorn. People are starting to stream in now here for that ceremony, which is getting underway. We also did get the chance to speak with Teppo and Timu earlier today, taking in the sights and sounds of Winnipeg over the last 3 days while they've been here, reminiscing about those cold winter nights, the frozen hockey hair from nights they spent at the Palomino Club, to just random road hockey games that they took in with some of the kids in the city of Winnipeg when they played here for Jets 1.0. Here's a little bit about what they had to say about their time in Winnipeg.
He's playing street hockey in the street. I said, can I join? And they're like, oh, sure. And no, it was a great time. There's such great memories, and especially when I was young here, I was very active with pretty much everything outside. So I always said that I'm very proud and thankful that I started here.
You get involved with the community and people around you, and then you find out who you're going to play for, and you have to have a reason, really a reason, and who you play for, and then you get to know your city and your community and people around you. And
so it's Nooneman there saying that he, over the past few days, has taken in some of the sights of Winnipeg as well, saying he's very impressed with this building, the Canada Life Centre. Of course, neither of these brother Finns, if you will, actually played in this as part of Jets 1.0, saying that they've actually missed the old Winnipeg Arena, their old stomping grounds where they played those so many years ago. The ceremony here at Canada Life Centre gets underway at 7. The Jets, of course, facing the Anaheim Ducks tonight. Janet?
Thank you so much, Riley. Riley Lachuk reporting live from Canada Life Centre. People who live in Winnipeg's West End are frustrated with how long it's taking to clear the debris left by an apartment fire earlier this year. As CBC's Cameron McLean reports, the city councillor for the area wants to make it easier to clean up derelict properties.
This pile of rubble is all that's left after a fire destroyed a vacant apartment block on Sherbrooke Street in February. 9 months later, neighbors say they're still waiting for somebody to clean it up.
Franco Perotti lives a couple houses down. He says people frequently squatted in the building before the fire and still sees people picking through the rubble sometimes.
It's just a pity because it stays there. It's a long time. At least and clean it up. They haven't even cleaned it up. They let the whole summer pass by and nobody came here to clean it, nothing.
The fire broke out shortly before midnight on Valentine's Day. After the fire, the building was torn down and the property fenced in. The councillor for the area agrees the pile of rubble is an eyesore.
It's just not fair that these things are taking as long as they are, and we have to start dealing with the boarded up and vacant buildings issues that we have in Winnipeg. And I have some motions coming through council this month that are looking at strengthening our bylaws and making sure that we're dealing with these areas in which we have vacant buildings.
One of Gilroy's motions would allow property owners in some areas to demolish buildings without a plan to build something new. And another would add fines to the property tax bill. Perotti hopes someone does something with the property soon.
If they put some apartments there or something, I'll rent one too. Like, I don't know. Even a condo for sale, I'll probably buy one. If it was it, If they do something with it.
Attempts to contact the owners of the property were not successful. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A protest in support of safe drug consumption sites closed down Memorial Boulevard in Winnipeg earlier today. About 100 people performed a round dance, tying up traffic for about 17 minutes. Police routed traffic around the area before the peaceful protest broke up. Many of the people who have participated in this round dance have also been involved with a conference the Manitoba Harm Reduction Network has been holding in the city. It's a great place, a place you can play pool, you can play air hockey, even video games, all of it with the goal of keeping youth in a Northern First Nation busy, giving them something to do. According to Statistics Canada, Norway House Cree Nation has one of the youngest populations in all of Canada, with over 34% of its population being under 15 years of age. The CBC's Stephanie Cram is in Norway House as part of CBC Manitoba's Northern Community Tour. Stephanie joins us now from this youth centre we've been talking about. It's got to be cold in the community tonight, Stephanie, but boy, it looks warm and fun where you are.
Yes, Janet. Earlier today, I was out with a trapper. We were rabbit snaring, going around looking at the snares, seeing if there was any rabbits there. So I'm still kind of defrosting at the moment, but I'm really happy to be here at the youth centre at the multiplex in Norway House Cree Nation. And I'm joined by Councillor Dion Clark. He was the councillor behind this youth centre here. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Stephanie, for being here.
And first off, what was the inspiration behind why you wanted to open up this space?
The inspiration came from growing up in the community, and there wasn't a whole lot of extra activities. We had hockey and sporting activities within the school, but there wasn't really a lot of drop-in centers or anything. So growing up, I wanted to have those kind of stuff. So being in this position allowed me to start to work to build this kind of place.
And I hear that this location is fairly new. Give me a bit of the history of when this opened up.
Well, it was previously it was a VLT, they called it. It was a video lottery terminal place that had many machines. But after that closed down, they got their new building. They said, what are we going to do with the new space? So we started working on this a couple of years ago. It was a slow process, but eventually we got it open in March of this year. So it was great. It was great that kids were happy to have it.
There's quite the crowd here. Is this a normal Thursday night in the youth centre in Norway House?
I think that tonight's actually a little bit of a quiet night. It's very nice to see the kids come here every day. There's a lot of usuals and a lot of new kids that come all the time.
And as I said, it's the first real cold day since we've been here. Is this something that's more busy over the winter months when it's quite cold?
I hope so. I wouldn't say it's more busier because there's a lot of kids that like to play outside, snowing, sledding, skidding. So those are the type of things that they like enjoying. So I think you get a mixed amount of kids playing inside and outside.
And I imagine you've been talking to the youth. What's their reaction once you open this location?
Their reaction is they were excited. The glow in their eyes, their smiles were priceless. That having the kids come into here, them enjoying the place, and this being thankful and being grateful to have a place of their own.
And there seems to be quite the budding pool players here. Do you think anyone will become pro after this?
I really hope so, and I want to challenge them too. I want to be able to go with them to different places and maybe world championships.
You've already been challenged. Well, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for being here.
Back to you, Janet.
That's the CBC's Stephanie Cram reporting live from Norway House tonight. John Sauder joins us now on a day when we've seen more light snow.
Yeah, I had to brush the car off a little bit after work last night, and then this morning I had to kind of shovel up a few centimeters, and it's snowing again, and we've had some wind. And it looks like that's going to continue. We'll get into the details here in a second. I want to show you the current conditions first. And we did get to -5 for a brief moment today, and now -7. The temperature, like I say, -7, but the wind was really the story today. Northwest at times gusting to 50. Right now settling into that 24, 25 range out of the northwest. But we still could see some gusty weather as we head through the evening. I think really generally the wind is going to drop a little bit overnight and then pick up again late on Friday. So if you have some highway travel plans late Friday, could be interrupted a little bit by some blowing and drifting snow. There's the snow we're seeing in the downtown area right now. I'm looking out the window just past Janet, and I can see in the street lights, it's that really light snow once again. The light fluffy stuff that when it does get windy, it's really easy for that stuff to blow around. And it's right out of the northwest, as you can see. So a few breaks in the cloud tonight, but we're right back into cloud cover early on Friday. And we see this band of snow right through the central portion of the province, coming off of a low center that's well to the north. And this is Friday morning, and then in the afternoon, this will continue to move down across into the Red River Valley, southeastern Manitoba. We're still getting lake streamers off the lakes. There's still some open water in the big lakes. So there's 5 p.m., and by that time, winds are gusting to 50, on into the evening, more like 60 kilometers per hour. And we start Saturday with a few sunny breaks. There's some snow in the west, but look at the clearing moving into Saskatchewan just in time for the big game on Sunday. And I will have a much more agreeable weather forecast for the Grey Cup game coming up a little later in the show. Sunday, mix of sun and cloud, and we'll see some wind out of the west, but not quite as much wind as what we're going to see in the next couple of days. So, additional snowfall. This is from now until about 5 o'clock on Friday. And we're looking at 3 or 4 centimeters. If I advance this through the evening hours to about midnight or so, or actually right up to 6 a.m. on Saturday, another 1 or so centimeters. So it's not a lot of snow, but it's more about the wind that we're going to see as we head through into Friday night. Next 24 hours, Thompson 5, same with God's Lake. Barons River at 7 should see about 5 centimeters in Norway House as well. And then forward from there into Saturday morning, no additional accumulation in northern Manitoba. Look for the bright colors here as we head through the night tonight and into tomorrow. So early tomorrow, winds very gusty in southwestern Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And then as we get into the afternoon and evening, so this is 8:30 in the evening, we've got winds gusting to 65 around Gimli, almost 60 in Winnipeg, and through Morden and up through Carman and down into areas like Emerson. We're looking at winds gusting over 60, but they are starting to quiet down on the Saskatchewan side of the border. Saturday looks much, much better as far as wind is concerned on our highways with all that fresh snow that is really easy to blow around. So with a few clear breaks overnight tonight, minus 14 degrees is the low. We'll see light snow on and off through the day tomorrow, a high of minus 7. There's your afternoon winds, but they get stronger on into the evening hours. And then in the long range, a cool start to the weekend. Minus 16 on Saturday morning, minus 10 in the afternoon. And then we start to warm up. Next snow would be on Monday, but not until much later in the day on Monday.
Weather Update is brought to you by Home Equip, your trusted local source for Pride Mobility scooters. From sales to rental and repair, our team is here to serve you.
The Grey Cup game is just 3 more sleeps away. And the big news today is that Bombers quarterback Zach Collaros will play Sunday. He hasn't been practicing due to that ankle injury he suffered in the last game. Collaros is up for Most Outstanding Player at tonight's CFL Awards. That awards show kicks off festivities in Regina. And the team say despite the chilly weather they had there today, the Grey Cup in Saskatchewan feels right.
They were like, what happened?
CFL Hall of Famer Michael Pinball Clemens usually has a smile on his face. The Toronto Argonauts general manager says the league's championship game is being held in the right place.
This is the epicenter of Canadian football. This is the heartbeat of who we are, right?
Saskatchewan may be the CFL's heartland. The players say playing here in late November has its challenges.
Man, just layer up, put on a bunch of layers. But to be honest, it's mentally. You got to tell yourself, it's all about one thing, and one thing right now is winning a football game. So cold don't matter, to be honest. I'm not going to be outside in the cold if I don't have to be. But I will be for them 3 hours on Sunday.
As for the Blue Bombers, they may be more acclimatized to the weather than their eastern opponents. And coaches and players on Winnipeg have some close connections to Regina.
It's exciting just because it is home in that manner. So when you walk around, there's a lot of familiarity about the place itself, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to get a chance to be a champion again.
The Grey Cup game in Regina is a homecoming for Bombers offensive lineman Patrick Neufeld. In 2013, Neufeld was a member of the Rough Riders, but was traded a few weeks before the team's Grey Cup victory on home turf. Neufeld says having the game in his hometown is extra special.
It's kind of come full circle. I started my high school or my football career in high school, and I play games at the old Mosaic Stadium, and to be able to come back here for a Grey Cup week and be able to play in the game is pretty cool. So I'm trying not to let it affect me too much, thinking of all the nostalgia and stuff, but being able to reach out to friends and family here in town is pretty great.
This will be the 3rd consecutive Grey Cup for 3 players raised in Winnipeg, but the first where one of them will be actually playing for the other guys. We caught up with all 3 of them today in Regina.
We sent each other messages and talked on the phone for a little bit, just kind of congratulating each other and kind of joking around, kind of like, this is a little bit surreal, but what a better opportunity, to compete against each other than on the biggest stage in CFL. So I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, I know the spotlight's going to be on that running back position against me and Andrew, but I mean, at the end of the day, we're playing against the Toronto Argonauts. There's one thing in mind, and that's to go out there and do our job, go 1-0 every single play, go 1-0 on the day, and then, come out with that victory of being a Grey Cup champ.
Winnipeg is 5 hours away too, so there'll be quite a few people come from Winnipeg as well to be here for the game. So I said if I see them wearing blue and gold, then it's friends off. So, but they're here to support, and I'm looking forward to it.
Friends off just for wearing blue and gold, Andrew? Come on! With Regina so close, there will no doubt be a lot of people there that Andrew Harris knows and loves wearing Bomber gear, including his high school football coach, Stu Nixon. In fact, all 3 of the Winnipeg players were once Oak Park Raiders under Coach Nixon, who just retired in June. I spoke with him about an hour ago. Hello there, Stu Nixon. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
How are you feeling about this game?
I'm excited. It's the first Grey Cup I've seen that's not in Winnipeg. I've been to a couple in Winnipeg, but this is the first one I've gone to outside of Winnipeg, so it's going to be fun.
It won't be the first time, maybe the first time in person seeing players you used to coach play for the big game. What's it going to be like? 3 times now, these 3 players have been the top of the CFL. How does that feel?
Just once would be probably special. I don't know how many coaches live or past can say that they've watched their high school kids play in a Grey Cup, like 3 of them. Anyway, that's rare to see it happen once. To see it happen 3 times, I mean, I don't know, it's unbelievable. I mean, that's why this is such a story, right? 3 boys from the same team playing in the Grey Cup.
From our fair city, from Winnipeg. We're very proud.
Yeah,
but there's a difference this year. Those players we're talking about are Nick Dembski, Brady Oliveira, and Andrew Harris. And this year, Andrew Harris is playing for the other team, for the Argonauts. What does that do to you with your divided loyalties? How are you going to handle it?
I'm a Bombers fan, so I'm going to cheer for the Bombers no matter what. But you want to see, I mean, personally, you want to make sure that all of your boys play well. I mean, make sure. You hope that all of your boys play the best they can in that game, right? Ideally, you like your athletes to peak for the championship game, and I'm hoping that all 3 of them peak for that game. I still want to see the Grey Cup come home, but it'd be nice if we saw Andrew become the Canadian of the game, outstanding Canadian of the game. That'd be like the perfect game for me.
There is something else going on in the city of Winnipeg right now that you're connected to, and it was somebody else's idea. You retired from teaching and coaching at Oak Park High School just in June. You're now a school trustee, and the school is setting up, with help of the father of a former student or 2, an annual scholarship in your name. How does that feel?
Yeah, honestly, the person who initiated that whole project, his name is Gil Terrell, and he coached with me 1 year, and he was a good coach, and he was a really good player. We played against each other when we were children, and I needed a defensive back coach, so I asked him to coach. And then after last season, when I announced that I was retiring, Gil contacted me with this concept, and first I thought it was just a dinner, and it's too big a deal for my comfort level, right? But when he mentioned that it's going to go to a scholarship of a graduating athlete with outstanding character and an outstanding contributor to the community, and absolutely, you're going to do that. Who wouldn't do that? Good kid gets a $1,000 scholarship to go to school year after year after year. That's wonderful. So I agreed to go along with it. And then Gil got a hold of Joe Pisecki and Paul Bennett. And those guys are just animals. They've turned this thing into a giant event. And we've already got our first recipient, Cole Kennedy, who he's the president of Oak Park right now. He's a straight A student. He's an outstanding kid. He's just a kind human being. He's a great football player, provincial lacrosse player, great hockey player. He was an outstanding recipient for it. So already I feel much more comfortable with the whole idea.
Well, I talked to Joe, one of the people you mentioned there. He seems to think you're a pretty good human being too. So enjoy the game, drive safely, and also enjoy this fundraising dinner coming up November 30th at the Gates on Roblin. Stu Nixon, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. Thanks a lot.
Don't forget to subscribe to our CBC Manitoba YouTube page. You see all kinds of good stuff there. You can watch what you want, watch our newscast anytime, go through fast, go through slow. It's all there for you. We'll be right back. There are widespread power outages in Ukraine after more Russian airstrikes. UN officials warn a humanitarian crisis looms, with millions possibly facing repeated outages through the coming winter. CBC's Chris Brown reports.
Russia's attacks on Ukraine's energy grid continue today with more missiles, this time some landing and destroying a gas plant in the city of Dnipro, leaving dozens of people wounded. This has been a pattern that's been going on all week, where Russian cruise missiles have been landing on cities from the east all the way to where we are in the city of Lviv, which is in the west. We've talked to people here who said they've not had electricity for a couple of days. Electricity only came back on yesterday. Another family who we spoke to, who lived just in the outskirts, said that they only get power for 3 hours a day. So clearly Ukraine's energy grid is suffering, but at the same time, people have told us that while this is obviously very worrying to them, while they're particularly afraid for their kids and so forth, they're bulking up with blankets where they can, buying candles, and trying to make do as best as they are able. Right now, we're only perhaps 50 kilometers or so at most from the border with Poland, and that, of course, is where an investigation is going on now into why a missile landed just on the other side on NATO territory in Poland, killing 2 men there. We've heard from various officials in the Polish government as well as NATO that the belief now is that this was a Ukrainian air defense missile that went astray. We're also hearing today from Polish media reports quoting sources in the president's office suggesting that, in fact, what might have happened was that this missile was fired at an incoming Russian cruise missile, missed it, and then for some reason that Ukrainian missile did not explode, which it is supposed to do, and it landed and, as I say, killed 2 people in Poland. That is clearly what that investigation is going to be focused on going forward. Chris Brown, CBC News in Lviv.
A Dutch court has convicted 3 men for their role in the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 over Ukraine in 2014. That civilian passenger jet was hit with a Russian surface-to-air missile, killing all 298 people on board. Briar Stewart has details.
For 8 years, the families of the victims on board MH17 have been waiting for justice. Now they have some, but many say what they really want is accountability from the top.
It's the Russian aggression in Ukraine that killed 298 people on MH17, and we want to see an end to that aggression, an end to that war.
The court sentenced 3 of the 4 men on trial to life in prison for helping bring down MH17 with a missile supplied by Russia, fragments of which were found embedded in the aircraft and even in the body of one of the crew members. Back then, Canadian Michael Bossaque was on the team investigating the crash. He says the verdicts are an important milestone.
So I think this is a first step in justice being served and holding Russia culpable for heinous war crimes.
Nearly 2/3 of the victims on board were Dutch. 1 Canadian was killed, 24-year-old Andre Angel from Ajax, Ontario. His family and their lawyer watched a live stream of their ruling.
The court was clearly rejected the lies and propaganda put forth by Russia as an explanation for what happened.
The court found that Russia had control over the fighters in eastern Ukraine and supplied the missile system.
Obviously, in hindsight, this was a grave warning of things to come.
All of the men convicted were tried in absentia. One of them is Igor Girkin. In 2014, he was the defense minister of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic. And recently, there were unconfirmed reports that he was headed to Ukraine to fight. None of them are likely to face jail time unless they leave Russia and are arrested. One Russian lawmaker said this ruling has no legal consequence, and the country's foreign ministry accused the court of bias and bending to political pressure. Stewart, CBC News, London.
Here in Canada, the inquiry into the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act earlier this year heard new details about how the act was used to freeze the bank accounts of convoy protesters. Marina von Stackelberg reports.
As protesters dug in their heels in downtown Ottawa and at border blockades across the country, the Canadian government wanted to find a way to cut off the flow of money propping the convoys up. But existing laws didn't allow for that.
Pretty much anything that we could do would require a legislative change. And legislative changes, by their nature, take an extended period of time.
The Emergencies Act gave authorities the power they needed. The RCMP provided information about the protesters to financial institutions, who then moved to freeze their accounts.
If you could do it with freezing bank accounts or whatever other measures were necessary, that was an awful lot better than having to go in with police and clubs, right?
Finding instruments that create an environment where people have an incentive to go home, having made their point, that seems to us to be a path worth pursuing.
In total, $8 million in assets were frozen from about 280 accounts. The lawyer for convoy organizers argued cutting off the funds raised for them through crowdfunding sites was infringing on Canadians' rights to support a political cause.
When the government interferes with what is to be done with those funds, can you not agree that it interferes with those donors' freedom of expression? Can you agree with that?
Look, the government took a decision that these activities were illegal.
Civil liberties groups also pushed officials on the lasting impact on protesters' credit ratings and whether the government had really exhausted all other options. Canada's finance minister says invoking the Emergencies Act was the last resort.
I remain today absolutely convinced it was the right thing to do, and I'll have more to say next week.
The inquiry is now heading into its final week. Chrystia Freeland, other cabinet ministers, and the Prime Minister himself will be called to testify. They made the final decision to invoke the Emergencies Act. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
A man named Ernest McPherson lives in a community called Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan. He rarely sleeps on cold nights because, like many others who are homeless, he doesn't have a place to stay safe from harsh weather. So the 54-year-old patrols the streets to keep himself and others from freezing to death. Bonnie Allen has his story.
Soup keeps you warm at night. Ernie McPherson rarely sleeps at night. The homeless man is always on the move, so he won't freeze to death.
Everybody home.
And neither will others.
One's in the back seat, one's in the front seat over there.
Like many small cities, Meadow Lake has no homeless shelter and no drop-in center for people to warm up in the evenings or on weekends.
It's like there's nowhere in the world for them, and nobody wants them. They're really happy when they see me come along.
Ernie likes to check in on about 15 people every night, and he has a pretty good idea where to find them, often in alleyways, abandoned buildings, or vehicles.
Doesn't take long to freeze out here.
The daytime brings warm refuge. Good afternoon, young men. Those here at Door of Hope Soup Kitchen say McPherson has saved more than one life. He says he does it because someone saved his life last winter when he fell asleep outside in a snowstorm.
And I know I would have died. My guardian angel.
Last week, the province announced more money for shelter spaces in larger cities. It says people in communities that don't have a shelter can ask social services for hotel room tokens. But this outreach worker says homeless people are often denied.
They've been told, sorry, you've already maxed yourself out this time.
A group of business owners, church leaders, and concerned residents have formed a coalition to lobby for a shelter. In the short term, they want to keep this place open 24/7 to provide heat, supervision, and security.
People are going to die, and it's on us. It's gotta be addressed.
As for Ernie McPherson, some friends helped him buy this camper to get him off the street, but there's no heat.
That'll start the furnace inside, but right now it's empty.
Still too cold to sleep, too scared to rest. He's back on the streets come nightfall.
Something I gotta be here doing. Until there's a shelter, I'll be here patrolling every night.
Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan.
Still ahead, the draft deal for the COP27 climate conference. How much will the words in the deal really mean? That story and John Sauder with his look at the Manitoba forecast still to come. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. A draft deal at the COP27 climate crisis. Let me try that again. The COP27 climate conference was released today as the UN Secretary General said the world is burning and drowning before its lawyers' eyes. Sarah Yarnlook reports.
There were three things that people were watching for as this draft came out. First, people wanted to see if the target of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius would remain in the text. It was included in last year's agreement in Glasgow, but there was this fear that countries would actually backtrack to the language used in 2015 in Paris, which was far less ambitious and only committed to limiting warming to well below 2 degrees. The next thing delegates were watching for was if it would call for the phase out or phase down of fossil fuels, but this text only mentions coal, not oil or gas.
The climate clock is ticking and trust keeps eroding. The parties at COP27 have a chance to make a difference here and now, and I urge them to act and act quickly.
The third thing was loss and damages. Developing nations, including the host country Egypt, have been asking for an agreement on how they will be compensated for the damages climate chaos is causing them. This was also absent from the text.
I do expect that there'll be progress on loss and damage. I think it's very important to the leadership and a lot of countries that are here. And there'll be some marginal, I think, progress on what a future plan for climate finance might look like, but it's sort of only going to be step one. And beyond that, I think it's really going to depend on the really heavy political consultations that are coming.
So there is still hope more progress could be made from this point, but generally the draft text is actually more aggressive than the scaled back final version that leaders agree to. So that a draft text is so mild in its goals is demoralizing to a lot of people. Sarah Larnuk, CBC News, London.
Meteorologist John Sauder joins us again. I know we've had a little bit of snow and there's more on the way, but nothing like the storm you told me about today.
Yeah, you know, it's actually over the next 3 days, and it's all lake effect snow, and there's snow, and then there's lots of snow, and then
not here, right?
Not here, but this is epic snow, and I'm just going to show you this because it's going to be a news story coming up. So a look at the radar, and if we zoom in on this, look at the Buffalo area where it is already starting to really hammer down snow. Buffalo is right about here. Look at some of the amounts being posted by the Buffalo National Weather Association or National Weather Service in that area. 48 to 60, that's not centimeters, that's inches. That's 5 feet of snow expected over the next 3 days. So that's 150 centimeters. And that's not including what the wind will do to blow that into drifts. And then we have, 3 to 4 feet up around Clayton. So, yeah, the lake effect snow here is nothing like we've ever seen in southern Manitoba. You'll see video coming up in the next few days of the epic amount of snow in that area. Temperatures look like this across the south, -7 to -8 in Winnipeg. Little cooler out to the west in Regina today. I saw some raw footage or raw video of the Bombers practicing. It was -15 and it was windy and snowing. It's going to be nothing like that as we head into the Grey Cup day, and I'll have a Grey Cup forecast for you a little later. Mid-teens to even some -20s or close to it up to the north. Forecast conditions for tonight in northwestern Ontario. Includes just a chance of flurries, really. Other than that, it'll just be a cloudy sky and straight -12s right across the board. -14 here. We'll see some evening light snow, followed by a few breaks in that cloud cover, and it'll remain windy along the international border. Brandon down to -17 tonight under cloudy skies. Clouds really dominant through the southwest, and light snow overnight in Swan River, but no appreciable amounts. We'll see a couple of centimeters to maybe 4 centimeters around Thompson tonight. So lots of snow across the north tonight and tomorrow, but it'll end late in the day. Still periods of snow through Lynn Lake. Some clearing happening around Flin Flon in the afternoon. Same with Thompson, Norway House. So most of the snow is in the morning. A sun-cloud mix in the afternoon. Couple of centimeters for Island Lake. And then here in the south, we're just looking at occasional light snow and winds gusting to about 50. Even through the Brandon area, highs -6 to -7 in the west, a -7 in Winnipeg. That's pretty consistent temperature through the southeast. And again, occasional light snow, windy conditions. Need to watch the driving in open areas with possibly reduced visibility and blowing snow. And just a few flurries and still windy, -9s and -10s in northwestern Ontario.
Thank you, John.
My pleasure.
It combines rock, tragedy, and the belief that everyone makes art, and some people can make it like no others. After the break, we find out about this integrated cast of disabled and non-disabled actors performing the Greek tragedy Antigone. Stay with us. They call it the sublime collision of ancient Greek tragedy and modern rock musical. Antigone, produced by Winnipeg's Sick and Twisted Theatre and a cast of deaf, disabled, and non-disabled artists, opens tonight at Theatre Sec Molière on Provencher Boulevard. The show features original music performed by local band the Mariachi Ghost. Take a look.
Action. If she wins this trick and walks away.
Hi, I'm Debbie Patterson, and I'm the artistic director of Sick and Twisted Theatre.
Or someone closer to me than my whole family.
It's a tragedy, a Greek tragedy, about a woman named Antigone, whose brothers have just died. There was a civil war, and her two brothers were leading two opposite armies. And now the new king has declared that her one brother won't be buried. He'll be left for the dogs and birds to eat. And she can't obviously put up with that. So she buries him, and then the king condemns her to death. And it's kind of the unraveling of the king's life, his whole life, because of this one decision he's made. This is one thing I love doing with Sick and Twisted, because Sick and Twisted is a disability theater company, but I love working in integrated companies. There's so much about disability that is fertile ground for creative exploration, right? Because the normal way of doing things is no longer available to you, so you get really good at the life hack or the workaround, blowing your mind open to explore other possibilities. And that idea of limitless possibilities that are open to you once the status quo or the regular way of doing things is no longer available is really a great creative process.
Hi, I'm Tracy Nipanak. I play part of Chorus and Eurydice in the play Antigone. There's so many levels of what this play is about. For the disabled, for the marginalized, for people who love musicals, for people who love Greek tragedy. There's something for everyone.
I don't care if she's my sister's child.
Radical inclusion, radical hospitality is part of what we do, right? So we have shows that are interpreted, ASL interpretation. We have live audio description for vision impaired audiences, and there's a blind woman in the show as well. We also have ticket prices that range from $0 to $40, and you can choose what price you want to pay so that money isn't a barrier to coming, right? We want this show to be available and accessible to everyone.
Can we get this over with? I take no pleasure in your words, nor you in mine.
You won't see anything like it anywhere else. It's huge. It's like a big show in a small theater. It's huge. It's for everyone, and you should just come.
Mariah Carey also actually wants the title Queen of Christmas. She wants to own it. In fact, she filed documents trying to trademark the title and a few associated phrases. But Grinch that it is, the United States Patent and Trademark Office denied her request after another singer, Elizabeth Chan, filed an objection. As a result, both women can continue to call themselves the Queen of Christmas, as can anyone else. Feel free to adopt the festive moniker. Still ahead, John's 7-day forecast and your daily lift. We'll be right back.
Here is a look at your Grey Cup forecast for Sunday in Regina, the Bombers and the Argonauts. Now, daytime high in Regina is about -1, -3 at game time, though. A bit of a wind out of the west generally at 20 to 30, but certainly falls under the could be a lot worse category. We'll cool off into the weekend, and then we're back into something close to seasonal for Sunday. Monday, more snow Monday night and Tuesday next week. As we heard earlier in the show, two beloved Winnipeg Jets alumni are being inducted into the Jets Hall of Fame tonight.
Teemu Selanne and Teuvo Numminen met with reporters today and shared fun memories. Here's your daily lift.
It's been great to show them the city and where we used to hang out and tell stories of the past and meet all the friends we have here. So really great time, and it's been fun.
Did you show all the bars and the Palomino Club?
Yeah. Everything.
Yes. We talk about Palomino stories. And those hot dogs, when we left like 2 in the morning, unbelievable.
You know, he's right.
Yeah.
Like hot dogs outside a bar when you're in your early 20s at 2 in the morning, they taste pretty darn good.
You can tell in their voices, though, they love Winnipeg and they've got a warm place in their heart for Winnipeg and Winnipeggers. And that ceremony gets underway downtown here in just a few minutes.
I love that they used to play street hockey with people. Have a great night.
Good night.